I am not a man of the news. I will have you know I am uninformed ignoramus. 99% of journalists give the other 1% a bad name. Satan himself was the first journalist. But it's quite safe, we'll go down to the local pub and there's this old English guy and he'll be like, oh, I've been watching bloody CNN. And let me tell you. And it's like, yeah, lay it on. Let me hear what CNN's saying, because then I know the exact opposite is true. And it's safe to say that whatever the mainstream media is talking about, the opposite is true. You just have to discern in what direction is the opposite. For instance, if I say this phone is blue and I'm lying, the opposite is it could be any other color. So we have to discern what the right opposite is. It's not often clear cut of like black and white or Russia, Ukraine, or, whatever. But you can just know that the party line, the machine line, is going to be false. And that's often enough for me. There are things that I'm interested in actually finding, okay, well, what is the direction of the opposite frame or the opposite take? South Africa is 30 years ahead of the rest of the Anglosphere. What happens in South Africa is the end goal of the rest of the Anglosphere. A diverse democracy where the rainbow is preeminent and we all live kumbaya with 50 murders a day and a collapsed middle class and infrastructure falling apart. This is our strength. So when you look at South Africa, a huge thing that's going on is the collapse of the liberal smoke and mirrors. For anyone who has eyes to see, multiculturalism is death. Multiculturalism is war. Multiculturalism is strife. And the liberal news, the liberal academia, the liberal churches, the liberal NPCs who lap it all up and follow power have for the longest time, that little dog sitting in the fire. This is fine. And anyone who says, no, this is not fine, they hit and they shame and they shun and they accuse and they name call. And so it's been really, with this EFF thing, the bottom line is that, with the ANC, they're not a black nationalist party. The EFF are not a black communist party. Their aim in life is not a positive vision for their people. Their aim in life is to punish and extricate or exploit wealth from the white middle class, from the white remnant. The ANC through tax and corruption and crime. The EFF through expulsion. Or genocide or whatever, their rhetoric carries. But the point is, who are the bad guys? Whites. So why is racism such a huge issue in South Africa? I grew up petrified of being called a racist. Racist was like the one word to burn all the little white boys and melt them to the ground where they stand. You just have to accuse a little white boy, little white Scott, of being a racist, and he would melt and be like, no, please, I'm not a racist. Please, I beg you. It's like, what? Looking back now, you're like, racist just means white, bro. Racist is just white. And you see that with, I was watching old Ernst Van Sale Conscious Caracol stream before coming on here, and he was just going through a bunch of the court recordings where Malema was going on and on about being victims of the white people and all this kind of stuff. And basically the advocate or the lawyer, whatever, was trying to get him to admit that he himself has racist rhetoric against white people because he's targeting whites as a group. Is that not racist? And it's like, no, of course it's not racist, because blacks cannot be white, and racist means white. So blacks cannot be racist. Blacks are victims. Whites are racist. That is the truth of the day. That is the zeitgeist of the day. Now you carry that across to the rest of the Anglosphere, right? Because the rest of the Anglosphere is under the same, is going in the same direction. It's going off the same demographic cliff. So many people in the Anglosphere don't know how to deal with the race question. They don't know how to deal with the racist accusation. They don't know how to deal with the manufactured guilt, the manufactured consent to being punished as a people group. whites deserve to be punished as a people group. Why? Because their ancestors are evil. You have blood guilt, and so you deserve to be punished. And when someone stands up and says, no, like either someone who's a pagan and is just like, well, screw you, F you, I'm going to fight, or a Christian white who stands up and says, no, like actually my theological understanding of who Jesus Christ is, I am free, I am clean, no condemnation. Jesus Christ came to free me from any of this grievance crap. So whichever way you want to motivate your saying no to punishment, just through the screw you, let's fight, or through the theological I'm free, either one, we now have a large swathe of racists, i.e. white people, standing up and saying, we don't care. We don't care anymore. We're not guilt-tripped anymore. We don't feel bad anymore because we had nothing to feel bad over. We are not going to accept other groups' grievances toward us. And when you look at certain groups, you look at the blacks, you look at the Jews, you look at the Indians, you look at the Muslims, you look at take any other group, the Latinos, take the Japanese, take a group that is distinct, right? They have an identity. There are many groups that have grievances to all of those groups. Take Israel, for instance. Does half of their whole Middle East, 99% of the whole Middle East, have grievances towards them? Of course. What is the Israeli response? Screw you. The Japanese and the Koreans, and probably the Chinese, they all have grievances towards each other. What is the response? Screw you. Think of any other racial grievance that does not involve white people as being the ones who did the grievance mongering. And there's, Russia and NATO, Russia and the UN. Screw you. That is the operating system of a strong leader who is looking out for the interests of his people. Because you get all these other groups who want to come in and parasitize or exploit or abuse your group of people, or collect on a grievance. And the strong leader of that group stands up and says, please translate accurately for me, translator. Screw you. That's what they say. Screw you. Screw you. And that's mean. That is bad. That is terrible. That is mean when a white person does it. When a white person says, no, I will not be punished. I will not be abused. Right of admission reserved. Get off my property. Screw you. You don't come into my institutions. You don't come into my life, my thoughts. I don't even think about you. That's a perfectly fine place to be. And unfortunately for a lot of these art groups, they are very fast. They are very quickly squandering the credit that a bunch of white Christian boys like myself have, where it's like, I'm willing to be nice to the art group. I'm willing to have benevolence and good negotiation with the art group. But the more they squeal and grieve and accuse and punish and exploit my people, the more I lose that goodwill toward that group that is being non-reciprocal, that is being non-respectful. And that's perfectly okay. Old liberal white boy libertarian Scott would have been like, oh, that's mean. You've got to always be nice to the out group. And it's like, reciprocity, chaps, reciprocity. There comes a time where, you can only be so respectful to the abuser. You can only be so respectful to the parasite. You can only be so respectful to the exploiter or the disrespecter. You can be classy. You can be forgiving. You can be Christian. You can be dignified, but you can say, get out of my house. I'm locking the door. You can never come back here again, or I'm calling the police. Apply that societally. So where was I getting with all of this? Oh, yes, the journalists. Yeah, just say the word journalist and we go on a rabbit hole here, people. My goodness. So the journalists have been equating AfriForum, a civil rights advocacy organization who advocates for a certain people group, for their people, a positive vision for their people. They don't hate on other groups. They don't have a death wish for other groups. They don't have a plan to exterminate and genocide other groups. They don't have political power to subjugate and exploit and abuse and parasitize other groups. They are for their group. AfriForum are for their Afrikaans people group, their Afrikaans culture. They want to advocate for a positive vision for their people, the survival of their cultural group amidst a multicultural tribal resource war. The EFF are against white people. They're against private property, and they're against peaceful coexistence in a diverse, multicultural, blah, blah, blah. And so all the journalists are like, they're the same picture. They're the same. And it's like, they're both race-based organizations. And it's like, one is for their people, the other one's to kill that people. Like, not the same, not the same. And so that's where I was just thinking of that title this evening of like, if someone has a problem with you loving your people, if someone has a problem with you loving your people, they probably don't love your people. And we've been so abused as white boys. We've been so Stockholm syndrome that it's like, oh, someone else who hates me and wants to punish me. Oh, please. Like, yes, I deserve it. And it's like, no, not anymore. Not anymore. Not my generation. We will not be abused. We will not be exploited. We will not be parasitized. We want sovereignty. We want peace. We want to live in peace, but we want to live on our terms. You know, it's the whole thing. Again, you can replace loving your own people with pursuing your own interests, right? If some other group has a problem with your group pursuing its own interests or protecting its own interests, they probably have a problem with your interests. And as white boys, we've been taught to be servant leaders, to put other people's interests before our own. And it's like, not anymore, not anymore. The time has come for us to put our own interests first, our own interests ahead of outgroups. You know, and we can negotiate. If other groups are respectful, then we will be respectful. If other groups are benevolent, then we will be benevolent. If other groups are scratching our back, we'll scratch their backs. But if that's not the case, then you know, we reserve the right to reciprocate even harder, you know. As it is, praise God. I'll finish my rant.